Welcome to Universal Man, where we turn your flight into fight so that you can master yourself and conquer your goals. My name is Mark Webbett, and I am here to help you sharpen your masculine edge so that you can cut through the resistance holding you back from becoming a man that you admire. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about killing the coward. And that means learning how to be brave, learning how to face down the cowardice that is inside of you. Since the dawn of time, I believe cowardice has been the #1 enemy to masculinity. And if you want to live on the front lines of your life and be someone that you admire, well, you need to learn how to take this part of you down and put it in its place. So that's what we're talking about today. So, the coward, okay? This is a part of all of us. It's actually built right into our biology. And I mentioned this previously in some of my recent videos. It's essentially your body's desire for homeostasis, meaning your body has a certain set of parameters that it likes, that it feels comfortable with, and that it will constantly pull you back to. And if you let it do that, without challenging it or really thinking about it, well, then what you're going to end up doing is living in this prison of comfort. And if you want to break free from that prison of comfort, well, you need to be brave. You need to learn how to kill that coward inside of you. And you may be wondering, well, I mean, if homeostasis or this, tendency toward comfort is something that, is a part of us, isn't it good? Isn't it somewhat like sensible to have this? Well, yeah, but there's a difference between being a coward versus being prudent, okay? And if you think about it for more than 5 minutes, you can usually tell the difference. It's like, oh, should I go wrestle that bear? No, probably not. That would not be a prudent thing. And you not wanting to wrestle a bear does not make you a coward. But, there are many things in life where you do need to confront them. You do need to show up and take them head on. Now, this kind of bravery, it shows up in, I would say, 3 different, core levels. All right. So on the mental level, it's the bravery to look at things. All right. And this sounds kind of trivial, but it's so big. If you don't look at something, well, then you can't do anything about it. And our tendency is to not look at things that are uncomfortable. So, our tendency is to kind of hide ourselves from looking at maybe the rather scary state of the world. We don't want to look at areas where we are uncertain or fearful. We don't want to look at where we might have screwed up and that sort of thing. Well, you need to look at it. You need to. If you don't look at it, then nothing else is possible. So I would say that's the first layer. All right. The next layer would be, after you look at it, it's the bravery to feel. Okay, because when you look at something, it's going to inspire an emotion inside of you. And this can be very uncomfortable. It can be stress, it can be worry, it can be confusion, it can be doubt. It can just be laziness. It can just be, a raw sensation of, I don't want to. That's the prison of comfort. But sometimes it doesn't, it's even potentially a good thing. Sometimes when you look at the truth of something, you have intense desires. Like, what is your real desire in this life? Maybe you have big aspirations and you don't want to look at them because looking at them, it fills you with a kind of almost an obligation to do something about it. And that puts stress on you, right? It can be sometimes just the bravery to love someone, to truly care about something, because, all these things, they require then you to act upon it. And that's the final level, all right, of bravery, is learning how to act. But you're not going to be able to act unless you can do those first 2 things of thinking and feeling, all right? And so many times people try to just jump to the action, and they're wondering why, I can't get myself to show up. I can't get myself to do this. I can't get myself to do that. Well, are you thinking about it? Are you really looking at it all? Are you allowing yourself to feel all of the elements going on there? If you're not, well, then chances are you're not going to be able to show up. And I think, like anything, if we want to make this practical, we got to kind of look at examples. All right. And I think one of the best places to kind of look at this is to take it to the archetypal level, take it down to the root. And I want to back up my statement that cowardice is the oldest enemy of masculinity by going all the way back to the story of Genesis. All right. Because the story of Adam and Eve, primarily the story of Adam, because I think that kind of spells out the core challenges to a man's bravery that he will face. And if you can, follow through this story and learn from the mistakes of Adam, then I think that, you can, in some ways, mitigate his fate. So let's look at this, all right? Adam's first failing would be, I would say, the failure to question, okay? So, let's think about it this way. God put this big tree in the middle of the garden, and he said, you can't eat it. Not allowed. I'm going to give you everything else, but you're not allowed to have that, okay? And as far as we know, Adam didn't raise any objections. He was just like, oh, okay. And I think the first thing that anyone needs to have is the bravery to question. I would have been like, yo, dude, come on, why can't I have some of that tasty fruit? It looks pretty good. And if you don't have the bravery to ask the hard questions, and I can imagine it'd be a hard question. You see God literally like create everything and give you all this power or whatever, and now you're going to question him. Well, I think that's what you have to do. I mean, if you look at the later instances, you see it in Jesus, and you see it in Mary's story, and even all other biblical characters. And I'm not just keeping this Christian or whatever. I would say that in most archetypal stories, real heroes question. They say, "What's going on here? How is this going to work out?" And I think you need to ask those questions, because those are the things that inform your ability to then respond. Okay, but say he did ask or he didn't ask. Regardless, if he didn't ask, he clearly did, or if he did ask, he didn't get any kind of strong answer. Okay. And so what that then puts you in, that brings us to this next stage. Okay. And it puts you in a state of uncertainty, or Adam was in a state of uncertainty. He's like, okay, well, I got this rule. I don't really know what to do about it. Okay. But I do know some things. I do know that, at least in the story, he has the knowledge of God, that he exists, and he has, the understanding of the animals and, what's been given to him. And he's got a pretty good grasp on things, maybe doesn't know everything. But when you don't have the whole picture, but you've got some, that puts you in a very, I think, that's kind of a situation that most of us are in all the time. We know some stuff, but we don't know everything. All right. And the bravery that I think reality is asking of us in those situations is to take what we know and smash it against what we don't. That means that you have to be willing to engage in debate and confrontation in those gray areas. Okay. And this is essentially what would have been required of Adam when Satan showed up. Satan comes along and says, oh, God didn't give you a satisfactory answer about what that tree's all about, huh? About why you couldn't eat it. Well, here, I'm going to tell you what's really going on here. He just doesn't want you to become like super cool like him. So you should probably eat it. And, that would have been the opportunity for Adam to engage in confrontation, to be like, not necessarily blindly reject him. It would have just been like, what are you talking about here? I mean, I trust this dude in the sky. He's been pretty good to me so far. Why should I listen to what you're saying? And engage him in a dialogue. Now, this is, I'm framing it as a philosophical kind of confrontation, but often there's a very visceral reality to it. And I think that can kind of be understood with, he's confronting a serpent. He's confronting this big bad monster. And, you could assume that this big bad monster had the ability to destroy Adam. Okay. And this is what it's like whenever we're confronting the unknown with our best understanding of things. There is it's a very visceral sort of feeling. And if you've ever really pushed yourself, you've ever really tried to figure something out and enter into that kind of unknown space, it ignites your fight or flight mechanism. Your body's like, your mind's telling you, hey, shit's kind of on the line here. This is serious. And it's a very visceral thing. And so this is uncomfortable, but being willing to step into this confrontation is ultimately going to be your best bet. But Adam didn't do it. He chickened out, right? And so this leads to his next failing, right? And so it gets worse from there. It's just going to keep getting worse. But so after, the failure to be brave enough to ask questions, failure to be brave enough to confront, he then is not brave enough to risk rejection, okay? And this is where it comes in with Eve. So Eve steps up, she takes a bite of the apple, and what did Adam do? He just went right along with it. He was pussy whipped. Okay. And I think it gets to the heart of a lot of stuff that guys face, particularly today. There is this tendency to worship femininity in an inauthentic way, to kind of elevate it to a point of trying to become kind of subservient to femininity, okay? And so essentially it's done from a place of weakness because you don't want to be rejected. Adam didn't want to be rejected by his wife. What he should have done is probably slapped that apple out of her hand and be like, hey, we gotta talk about this. But he didn't do it. He didn't do it, and why wouldn't he do it? Well, because he wanted to have sex with her, probably. He wanted to have sex with her, so he wanted to make her happy. And this is the failing of so many dudes today. They're just afraid of standing up to women. And at this point, it's being almost indoctrinated into us that you can't stand up to a woman. Otherwise, that makes you a sexist, pig. It makes you a monster. And this is just not a healthy dynamic between men and women. Both men and women need to be able to be honest with who they are and be able to bring that honesty to bear with one another. That's the only way we're going to get anything good done. We can't have one side meekly submitting to the other. There has to be authenticity there where, there's pushback and real communication. But Adam didn't. He had the pussy on the pedestal, and, things continued to deteriorate. So, they eat the apple, they find out they screwed up, and then what do? Well, another act of cowardice. Adam hides, right? He hides. And so what's this about? Well, I think this one's pretty self-evident. It's refusal to acknowledge when you screw up, and if you do this is the perpetual state of most guys, is that they refuse to look at areas where they are wrong. I know back when I was younger, this was incredibly difficult for me because I had a lot of pride. And so I would just kind of keep pushing in a direction that I knew I was wrong, so that I didn't have to face the reality that I was wrong in the first place. I didn't want to take that ego hit. And, I deal with this a lot with clients. They don't want to take the time to look at how they screwed up. And the big issue with this is that if you don't take the time to look at how you screw up, well, guess what? You're never going to learn. You're never going to grow. You're never going to improve. So it's you need to have the bravery to look at your sins, look at the places where you have, missed the mark, so that you can correct it, right? Pretty self-explanatory there. And so, Adam doesn't do this. And so he gets kicked out of the garden. He's had a number of failures already, and now he's really suffering the consequences. And because of this, he now has a new set of issues. He's cursed to a lifetime of toil and struggle, okay? And so this, as far as you can tell, this might be the area where Adam did manage to show up, at least somewhat, is that he did do the work, at least enough work to, have his line reproduce and be successful. So, but this is probably one of the ones where the modern man struggles a lot. I would say the modern man probably struggles with this more than any other man in history, because we have so many options to escape. We have so many easy ways out to avoid working hard. But guess what? We have to do it. If we want a life of meaning, fulfillment, satisfaction, all that kind of stuff, you've got to work. It means that you have to, on a daily level, step outside of your prison of comfort and do the good things that are good for you. If you don't, well, that comfort zone is just going to keep constricting you further and further and further until you feel like you're going to suffocate. And so this leads into the final one that we can extract from Adam's story, the final instance. And I would say it's the bravery to confront evil in the world. Because, Adam, he had two sons. He had Cain and he had Abel. And turns out Abel wasn't such a good guy. He was so bad that he actually killed his brother, right? Or wait, Abel, I said Cain. Cain wasn't such a good guy. I think that's what I said. I don't know. If I screwed up, Cain wasn't a good guy. And he was Adam's son. And so that was, I would say that would represent for all of us when we find something amiss within our sphere of responsibility. I think, the tendency, what the coward wants to do is the coward wants to run away. He wants to say, oh, it'll probably take care of itself. It probably won't get too bad. Maybe if I just, focus over here, that'll just kind of go on and nothing bad will happen. Well, that's just not the way the world works. We are in the law of entropy states that things will probably descend into chaos much more likely than they will fall into some sort of good order. Order is something that must be actively maintained and oftentimes created. And so if you don't address the cracks in your areas of responsibility, then they will grow and they will fester, and bad stuff will sprout out of them. And obviously this is a difficult thing to do, but again, you got to kill that coward and you have to get it done. And so if you want to look for the opposite of that and you want to keep it in the Christian narrative, well, that's what Jesus is. He's supposed to be the second coming of Adam, or the correction of Adam, of the person who is the hero, right? And if you're not a Christian, then just look into the hero archetype. The hero archetype is the person who steps up and confronts. He's the one who does all of these things. Instead of taking the coward's way out, he takes the hero's path of stepping into that thing, looking at it, dealing with it, and doing all that kind of stuff. But I think the thing that the bitter pill that needs to be swallowed here is the one that this coward is in you. It's in your blood, okay? It's in your DNA. And you have to kill him on a daily basis. Otherwise, he will ruin you. He will absolutely ruin you. And I think anyone who's being honest with themselves, they can see where the coward is running their life. And so you got to find that guy and you got to put a knife in his heart. And you're going to have to do it repeatedly. Eventually, certain elements of him will become killed permanently. You'll be able to establish a stable sort of order within yourself, but you always got to keep an eye out for him, because there will always be that temptation to return to complacency, to return to that comfort, and that preference for comfort very quickly turns into a cowardice. So you just have to be aware of it, and you have to continuously show up. So that's what I have for you guys today. Hopefully you found this interesting and insightful. Please leave comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this. But other than that, stay sharp, and I will see you in the next one.